Hi folks, I'm Chris Marshall with Woodworker's Journal magazine. One of the aspects of this Greene and Green dresser that I really like is this repeating pattern of box joints down the front corners of the drawers. If you look closely, the pattern of the joints changes from row to row. The sizes of the joints get larger as the drawers get deeper, which I really think helps to ground the piece visually. And the pattern alternates from row to row with either pins or sockets on the ends of the drawers, depending on the row. But as you can see here, this pattern of sockets and pins, regardless of the row, is symmetrical around the center of the joint. The geometry of the top half of the joint is the same as the bottom half. And that'll be important when I show you how to build these joints later in this video. Now, you've probably built box joints for other projects at your table saw or router table using a shop-made jig that looks something like this. It attaches to your miter gauge, and basically it's a fence with a pin that's fixed in it at a specific distance away from the blade, and the thickness of the pin matches the width of the blade. That spacing sets up the pins and slot cuts, and it works great for joints where the pins and slots are less than about 3/4 of an inch wide. But it doesn't work for oversized joints like these box joints because it takes multiple cuts to cut each one of these sockets. So when I built the dresser, I had to come up with another method for cutting these joints repeatably and accurately. And here's what I came up with. Instead of using a box joint jig, I made 3 sets of plywood templates, one for each of the drawer joint sizes I needed to make: the top drawers, the middle drawers, and the bottom drawers. And these templates help me set up the exact cuts for the pins and slots. And the templates are also sized to the exact width of the drawers. Now, these are the actual templates I used for building the dresser drawers. And as you can see, they not only set up the joints, but they also go together in a nice, easy fit. Using the templates, I was able to make all the necessary cuts at the table saw with the dado blade set and a special fence, and we'll get to that fence shortly. The first step in making the templates was to cut pairs of plywood blanks to the exact width of the drawer sizes. Then I laid out the patterns of pins and sockets for just the drawer faces, and on those I drew reference lines for the socket cuts on one half of the template only. Since the joints are symmetrical around the center, I only needed to lay out half the joint for cutting the template to shape. You'll see why next. Now here's that fence I mentioned earlier. It's just 2 wide pieces of plywood screwed to 2 miter gauges, and the 2 miter gauges make it easier to slide the fence back and forth when I've got one of the tall drawer side or drawer face workpieces clamped to the fence. Now there's a slot that runs through the fence. I've got a bolt running through that slot, and that allows me to set and lock this movable stop anywhere along the fence I need it with a knob. Now, what's the purpose of the fence? Well, using my drawer templates, I was able to register the slot cuts directly off the dado blade, and sliding my stop up against the end of the template and locking it in place gave me an exact reference for the edges of each and every one of these socket cuts. So, using the fence made it easy to cut my drawer face patterns to shape. To cut the drawer face template patterns, I just lined up a wide dado blade with the outside cuts of the sockets and clamped the jig stop to the edge of my template. Then I made 2 cuts, the first on the marked side and a second cut on the unmarked side of the template. Remember, since the socket and pin patterns are symmetrical, you can cut both halves of the template pattern at the same time by flipping the template around. With these first cuts made to define one end of the sockets, I could reset the stop block on the fence to cut the other end of the sockets in 2 passes. And once those were made, I could cut away the waste in between without using the stop block. I made all 3 drawer face template patterns, cutting them this same way. So now I had my 3 drawer face templates, but I needed to make my drawer side templates to fit them, because you can't cut these joints with just those templates. Here's how I made my drawer side templates. I clamped a drawer face template over its mate, lining up the ends carefully. Then, to make sure the drawer side template would fit once its pattern was cut, I knifed the pattern off of the drawer face template, but with one caveat. I used a feeler gauge shim between the knife blade and the drawer face template for each of these cuts. Now, the reason why I used a feeler gauge to set up my drawer side templates is I wanted the patterns to be just slightly smaller than the drawer face templates. That way they'd fit together easily. Now, if you don't have a feeler gauge, you can pick them up at any auto parts store, and they're full of these metal shims of different thicknesses. For my drawer side templates, I use the 8/1000 shim, but you might be able to use an even thinner shim than this and get good results. It worked fine for me. Now, once you get your drawer side templates knifed to size, head back to the table saw and cut them out the same way as you did the drawer face templates. There's a couple of other things I'd like to point out as you're cutting your drawer side templates. The sockets are actually 1/8 of an inch deeper on the drawer sides than they are on the drawer faces. That's so that the pins of the drawer sides will extend past the drawer faces by 1/8 of an inch. It's a nice Greene and Green detail for these drawers. And also, as you're cutting the drawer side templates, it's a really good idea to mark with X's the areas that you're cutting away. It'll help you avoid confusion because you'll always know exactly what you're removing. Now, cutting the actual drawer parts with simple repetition. Set either the drawer face template or the drawer side template against the blade to position the cuts, lock the stop block against the end, and then replace the template with the actual drawer workpiece. Clamp the board to the fence to prevent it from moving during cutting. Be careful to set the blade height correctly for either the drawer face or the drawer side cuts. I suggest you cut all the drawer faces first with the blade set low, then do the drawer side cuts next with the blade raised higher. Working systematically like this will help avoid mistakes. And fresh off the saw, the drawers fit together as well as the templates do. And even better, the parts fit together in either orientation just as easily. And that can really help if you've got a lot of drawers to assemble. So whether you decide to build this Greene and Green dresser project or another project with unusual or large box joints, give this templating method a try. And thanks for watching.